At least my ex was bigger. The words hit like a hammer, sharp, casual, laced with just enough venom to sting but not enough for her to lose the room. Everyone at the table laughed. Well, everyone except me. Even Jeremy, my so-called friend, choked on his wine like it was the punchline of a well-rehearsed bit. Tessa beamed, lifted her glass, and added, "Kidding. God, Martin's such a good sport." No, Martin wasn't. Martin placed his cloth napkin down, slowly, deliberately, as if folding the last bit of himself away. I looked up. I didn't flinch, didn't smile, just met her gaze and said, "Thanks for the honesty." Silence. Not dramatic movie silence, but the real kind, the kind that slips in under the skin, makes people fidget, clear their throats, suddenly fascinated by their cutlery. Her smirk twitched. She tried to laugh again. "Babe, it's a joke. You're not really mad, are you?" I tilted my head slightly. Why would I be? Sounds like a fond memory. Her face faltered, just for a second. Then the performance resumed. "Come on, guys. Someone pass the wine before my husband explodes." But I didn't explode. I just leaned back and watched the entire table pretend to relax again, while their eyes stayed locked on me like I was a sleeping dog who might bite. I chewed the inside of my cheek until it bled, not from anger, from calculation. But because that joke, 5 words and a half smirk, was the most expensive thing she'd ever say. It's wild how quickly a marriage can go from champagne to cyanide. One second you're toasting 12 years with the woman who used to trace your knuckles in bed. The next, you're blinking through laughter that's aimed squarely at your manhood. And the worst part? It wasn't even the joke, it was the tone, the glint in her eye, the knowledge that she thought I'd just take it, like I always did, like I was just part of the furniture now, useful, quiet, reliable, the man who pays the bills and shuts the hell up while she plays for applause. So I started counting the seconds. 10. Her wine glass trembled ever so slightly when she saw I wasn't going to save her from the silence. 20. Jeremy made some idiotic comment about dessert, trying to redirect the air. 30. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and smiled, not at her, just politely, to no one in particular. "Excuse me," I said, and walked out. Not stormed, not slammed the door, just walked. They watched me go, confused, waiting for the punchline, thinking this was all part of the act. It wasn't. And if you're still reading this, do me one small favor, hit the subscribe. I mean it. You wouldn't believe how many people read stories like this and never hit the damn button. It actually helps more than you think, keeps this whole thing alive. Anyway, she didn't follow me out. Tessa stayed and drank and laughed, probably called me sensitive once I was gone. And maybe I was. Sensitive enough to remember every single thing I'd done for her over 12 years, every promotion I passed up to be home more, every late-night pharmacy run, every apology I gave just to keep the peace. And in exchange, she tossed my dignity on the table like a party trick. I didn't sleep in our bedroom that night, didn't say anything, just pulled the guest sheets back, laid down fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling for 4 hours. She knocked once, lightly. I heard her hesitate, then open the door. "Mart," she whispered, like we were college kids in a dorm. "You okay? Come on, I was just messing around." I didn't respond. She waited. Then she gave the door a little laugh and walked away. That was the last time she laughed in that house, because I knew something she didn't. I was done playing the good sport. I was done being the safe man, the man who endures. Starting that night, I became something else, something she'd never seen before, something I didn't even know I could be. And when I finally showed her, she never joked about it again. She knocked on the guest room door like it was a game. 3 soft, mock-guilty taps followed by her sing-song voice, the one she used when trying to brush off bad behavior. "Martine, come on, babe, don't be like this." I didn't answer. She waited. I could hear her exhale through her nose, half sigh, half scoff. Then the knob turned. She peeked her head in like a sitcom wife. "You really gonna sulk over that?" It was a joke, Jesus. I sat on the edge of the bed, tying my shoes. Calm, dressed, a small duffel bag already zipped shut next to me. Her eyes flicked to it. "Where are you going?" I didn't look up. "I have an early call." That was it. No argument, no dramatic accusations. Just that one line, spoken so simply it made her squint. She didn't know what to do with that kind of quiet. Tessa's entire power was built on reaction. on creating emotional chaos and then sitting back while others tried to clean it up. Fine, she said finally. Be dramatic. Then she shut the door. I didn't say goodnight, and she didn't say sorry. At 4:42 a.m., I slipped out the front door with the duffel, left behind my toothbrush, a half-read book on the nightstand, and a box of cufflinks I hadn't worn since the pandemic. Left behind the man she thought I was. But I took the safe deposit box key, not from some hidden drawer or secret stash. It had always been in plain sight, hanging on the inside of my closet, behind my belts. She'd seen it 1,000 times and never once asked about it. But because why would she? Her idea of betrayal was intimacy, not foresight. I drove downtown in the dark, parked in the garage near 14th, and walked into the lobby of a building I'd been paying rent on for 9 years, under a name she didn't know. It was leased through a shell company, one I created before we got married. Call it pessimism, call it intuition, I just called it Plan B. Inside was everything she thought we had together, mirrored, another wardrobe, another life, copies of contracts, titles, backup drives, a full set of bank documents in my name only, a quiet, private proof of just how little she actually understood the man she married. At 7:03 a.m., Tessa woke up to an empty bed. She checked the kitchen, no coffee brewing, walked into our walk-in closet, half empty. She thought maybe I left for a flight I forgot to tell her about. Then she noticed the belt hooks were bare, my watch case gone, even the pair of black shoes I never wore but kept just in case. Gone. She opened the drawer where the safe deposit key usually hung. Nothing. It didn't hit her yet, not fully. At first it was probably confusion. Then that slow creeping unease, the one you get when you sense something's been shifting behind the walls all along. She called my phone. I let it ring twice, declined, no message. Then again, then again. By the 6th call, she stopped. She tried texting something cute. Okay, you've made your point. Come home. She didn't know yet that I had no intention of coming home. Not the one she thought she ruled anyway. You have to understand, I'm not impulsive. I didn't leave in anger. I left in certainty. I'd been collecting it for years. Every little humiliation, every e-roll in front of friends, every you wouldn't understand, and just let me handle it. I'd filed it all away in the same quiet part of me that used to imagine what life could look like without her. That part had grown, not out of resentment, but clarity. That morning, as the sun crawled over the city skyline and she wandered barefoot through the house with her robe half-tied and her hair a mess of sleep and confusion, I was already 3 steps ahead, watching from a distance. Not physically, but strategically. She didn't know it yet, but a very slow, very precise erosion of her world had just begun. And the cruelest part, it wouldn't come with shouting, or slamming doors, or ultimatums. Just silence. The kind that fills a space so completely it starts to echo. The next day, Tessa did what she always did when things felt off, curated the narrative. She posted a filtered photo from the anniversary dinner, one where she was laughing with her head tilted back, and I was mid-blink, barely visible in the background. She captioned it, 12 years strong, still the funniest couple around, marriage goals keep it light. It was the kind of post designed to preempt judgment, to package the night into something glossy and digestible, a pixel-perfect memory of a moment that had cracked something open. The likes came fast at first. Her usual circle, girls from Pilates, the HR director from her office, a few of the brunch wives, all tapping little red hearts without reading too deep. But then, it stalled. One couple, Lauren and Jake, commented, "Fun night," and then DM'd her to cancel the Sunday brunch they'd planned for weeks. Something came up, was all they said. No reschedule, just silence. Then came her sister, always quick with a heart emoji or a you too. This time, nothing. Not even a read receipt. By mid-afternoon, she was pacing in the kitchen with a glass of overpriced rosé, scrolling through her own post like it owed her something. She refreshed. Then again. That's when she saw the comment. Buried under a few dozen weak emojis and one sarcastic "wish I had your confidence" was a single line from an account she didn't immediately recognize. I wouldn't have laughed. No period, no context, just that. She clicked the profile. Mutuals, 3. One of them was Jeremy's wife. The same Jeremy who'd laughed the hardest when she dropped the joke about my size. The same Jeremy who stopped replying to her texts after I walked out. Tessa stared at the screen. The color drained from her cheeks. The comment sat there, unassuming but radioactive, not aggressive. Worse, it was honest. She deleted it, then reposted the photo with a new caption. Life's too short not to laugh. Love you, babe. But the damage wasn't in the post. It was in the silence that followed. A group text she was part of, the Ladies and Lattes chat, went quiet. No morning meme, no ugh Monday, just digital dust. She typed, "Hey, is everyone alive today?" and sent a laughing GIF. It was left on read. The next day, Lauren blocked her on Instagram. That was when she called me. 3 times. No voicemail. No text. I didn't pick up. On the 4th try, she left a message. I don't know what you're doing, Martin, but it's not funny. People are acting weird. You're not talking to me, and I'm getting, I don't know, frozen out of my own life. It was the first time I heard uncertainty in her voice. Not guilt, not remorse, just confusion. Like someone had rearranged the furniture in a room she thought she built. She still didn't understand. That joke at dinner wasn't just a dig. It was a match, and I had the gasoline. I wasn't feeding rumors. I wasn't slandering her name. I didn't have to. All I did was not protect her. For the first time in our marriage, I wasn't there to clean up after her ego. And Tessa, for all her bravado, had never stood on her own without me smoothing the edges. She didn't realize how many friends were friends because of me, how many relationships I had quietly maintained for us, how often I took the awkward calls, sent the thank you notes, remembered birthdays she forgot. All she had was her performance. And now the audience was walking out. She texted me again that night. I think we need to talk. This is getting ridiculous. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat at my downtown desk, sipping black coffee, watching the digital threads of her carefully woven social world begin to fray, not with fire, but frost. Cold, slow, quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't scream, but erases. Tessa always thought financial systems were boring. That's why she left them to me. Taxes, savings, investment accounts, all filed under the mental folder labeled Martin's Territory. She used to joke that I was her CFO husband. She said it with affection, usually while asking if her new shoes counted as a mental health expense. So when she opened the banking app on her phone that Thursday morning to transfer money for a friend's birthday trip to Napa, she didn't expect a blank screen. Login failed. She blinked, tried again. Account not found. She stared at the screen like it had insulted her. Then she walked to the kitchen, booted up her laptop, and logged in through the browser, because that's how you fix tech things when you're not actually tech savvy. Still nothing. The joint account, the one we called Us Fund, was gone. She called customer service, voice carefully calm but already curling with irritation. 5 minutes later, she was redirected to the branch manager. "Mrs. Hill?" the voice on the other end said, cheerful and unbothered. "Yes, my joint account isn't showing up. I need access immediately." The line paused. "Of course. Give me a moment to verify a few things." More silence. Then a new voice came on, this one lower, smoother, the problem escalation voice banks save for awkward moments. "Hi, Mrs. Hill. I'm Steven, the senior account manager here. I just want to confirm, have you recently experienced any changes in your marital status?" "What?" she snapped. "No, I mean, we're not living together at the moment, but that doesn't explain." "Well," Stephen interrupted gently, "your husband, Mr. Hill, removed himself from the joint account about 4 months ago. His portion was transferred to a private account under his name only." Tessa stood still, hand gripping the edge of the marble island like it was the only solid thing in the room. "I'm sorry, what do you mean, removed himself? He can't just—" "He can, actually. The account was set up with an opt-out clause built into your prenup, specifically triggered by any publicly documented act of infidelity or humiliation within the marriage. Your anniversary dinner was, well, quite public." She went silent. "Mrs. Hill," Stephen said, more softly now, "the bank received notarized documentation last week activating Clause 9B of your prenup. Based on the details provided and the footage, yes, we were provided footage from a guest's phone, your husband was well within his rights to activate the clause. The joint account was legally frozen, then divided. His funds are no longer accessible to you." "Footage?" she repeated, voice thin and distant. Yes, the dinner incident was, unfortunately, recorded by one of the guests, and since it circulated in your social circles, it counted as public humiliation under the terms of the agreement. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Mrs. Hill, Stephen continued, I understand this may be difficult, but Mr. Hill's preparations were extremely thorough. This wasn't sudden. He paused, which tells me he saw it coming. The call ended with Tessa sitting at the kitchen table, phone in hand, staring at the number she could no longer touch. The account that once held their savings, over 200 grand, was gone. His name scrubbed, hers left behind with the legal equivalent of a dry echo. She tried calling me again. I didn't answer. Instead, I sat on the balcony of the apartment she didn't know about, watching the early fog roll off the city skyline. No music, no TV. Just the sound of a man who planned for the exact moment someone would weaponize a joke against him and made sure that joke cost something. Tessa didn't just bruise my ego, she tripped a wire, one I set years ago, back when we first signed the prenup, and she laughed about it like it was cute. Why would we need this? She said. We're not those people. No, we weren't, until she turned me into one. Until she told a room full of people that her ex was bigger. Until the laugh she wanted came at the price of my dignity. And now, the joke cost her half our money. Tessa hated going to her father for help, not because they didn't get along. He adored her in that distant check-writing kind of way, but because asking him for anything meant admitting she'd failed. And Tessa didn't fail. Not publicly, not even privately. But when your friends stop answering, your bank account ghosts you, and your husband vanishes like a puff of logic, you go to the one man who still sees you as his little girl. She didn't call ahead, just showed up, unannounced, in black leggings and a cashmere sweater, looking shaken but trying to play it off as effortless. She always did this thing where she lowered her voice half a register when she needed something, a tone that said, I'm just tired, I've been through so much, help me. Her father, Howard, opened the door in his usual uniform, pressed chinos, monogrammed button-up, glass of something aged, already in hand. Tess, he said, surprised but not unkind, didn't expect you. Hey, Daddy, she said. Can we talk? He nodded and stepped aside. She walked in like she owned the place, though technically she didn't. That fact would matter soon. They sat in his den. Tessa curled up on the edge of the leather armchair like a college girl about to unload boyfriend drama. She launched into it, told him about the bank, the silent treatment, how Martin was acting like some vindictive man-child over a stupid joke. She even teared up at the right moments, tried to reignite the protective part of Howard that used to threaten teenage boys with lawsuits. Howard didn't interrupt. He swirled his drink and watched her, expression unreadable. Finally, she said, I don't even know what I did to deserve this. And that's when he said it. You don't? Tessa blinked. It was a joke, Dad. Jesus. Everyone laughed. It wasn't that serious. Howard leaned forward, setting his glass on the side table with a soft clink. Why would you humiliate a man like Martin? The question landed heavy, not loud, not angry, just still. Tessa laughed nervously. I didn't humiliate him. That's such a strong word. We've always joked around. He knows I don't mean anything by it. You think silence means weakness? Howard asked, cutting through her spin with surgical precision. She opened her mouth, ready to retort, but nothing came out. He stood, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled down a black leather portfolio, opened it, pulled out a single photograph, yellowed slightly at the edges, and held it out. She took it. It was a younger Martin, early 40s maybe, shaking hands with Howard outside a courthouse, both smiling. The kind of smile that isn't just for cameras, the kind men wear when something important just happened. What is this? That, her father said, returning to his seat, was the day Martin and I formed the Kingswell Trust, a private equity portfolio, family-managed, tax-sheltered, diversified assets. He's been my silent partner for the last 11 years. Tessa stared at the photo like it had a glitch in it. You and Martin? Howard nodded. You always thought he was boring, safe, that he worked in logistics and liked crossword puzzles and couldn't possibly understand people like you, because that's what he told me. No, Howard said. That's what you heard, what you needed him to be, a placeholder, a man who wouldn't challenge you. But Martin, he paused as if selecting the next words with care. Martin's the man I trust with half of my legacy. Tessa dropped the photo onto her lap like it burned. Why didn't I know this? She whispered. Because it wasn't your business, he said, matter of fact. It was never about you. Martin never made it about you. And maybe that's what upset you. Tessa's face flushed. He's punishing me. You're justifying it. No, Howard said. He's correcting the record. She sat there in silence, hands limp in her lap, mind spinning in a dozen directions. All the time she'd dismissed Martin's quiet comments. All the business dinners she'd skipped because they weren't worth it. All the time she'd told friends, Martin just doesn't get this world. Turns out, Martin built the world. She left an hour later, the photograph still clutched in her hand, her phone buzzing with texts she no longer had the stomach to read. And for the first time in her life, Tessa wasn't sure who she'd been married to all those years, because the man she humiliated, he was never small. He was simply watching, waiting, and he'd chosen the perfect moment to let her see the size of the shadow she'd been living in. The courier came just after noon, black sedan, tinted windows, no branding, the kind of delivery that doesn't ring the bell twice. Tessa opened the door barefoot, wearing an oversized sweater and the kind of sunglasses people wear indoors when they're avoiding both light and accountability. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, embossed in a way that suggested money and menace. No return address, just her full legal name in clean serif font. She shut the door, tossed it on the counter, and stared at it while her espresso machine wheezed to life. Something about it made her stomach feel off. Not fear, not yet, but the kind of unease that curls up in the gut and whispers, not this. Eventually she opened it. First, the cover letter from the office of Klein & Bowers LLP. Friendly enough tone, that was the worst part. The courtesy. It began, Dear Mrs. Tessa Hill, per your prenuptial agreement and the supplementary deed filed on October 11th, 2018, please be advised that as of April 14th, Mr. Martin Hill has executed a revocation of co-ownership of the property located at 1385 Layton Ridge, per Clause 17C. This clause was triggered by a verified public act of denigration within a domestic partnership, as defined in the binding agreement. Enclosed is a notarized copy of the revocation and the property reassignment documentation, as well as the activation memo from our office on behalf of Mr. Hill. She read it twice. The words refused to rearrange into something softer. Then she opened the attached documents. Legalese stamps, one line bolded in the middle of the notarized transfer. This revocation is permanent unless voluntarily rescinded by the grantor. All rights, access, and equity are hereby removed. The house. His house now. Her fingers started to shake. Tessa had always believed the house was hers, not because the papers said so, but because Martin never made it a point. He let her decorate, let her choose the fixtures, let her throw ridiculous parties and pretend their modern rustic nightmare was a joint masterpiece. She'd bragged about it. We built this together, she used to say, ignoring that the land came from his grandfather and the down payment came from a trust she never asked about. He let her believe it. Until now. The last page was a short handwritten note from the lawyer. Clause 17C triggered on March 26, 25 event. Public humiliation of spouse documented during formal social gathering, verified by multiple witnesses and digital media. Effective immediately, Mr. Hill has returned the property to sole ownership as permitted. Further instructions will follow. Below it, a post-it note, yellow and familiar, Martin's handwriting. Thanks for the honesty. She dropped the paper like it bit her. It was the same line he'd said the night she made the joke, the same cold surgical calm he'd used to end the dinner, and apparently their cohabitation. She stumbled backward, sat down on the stairs, still clutching the envelope. Her legs didn't feel right. Neither did her breath. It was shallow, fast, panicked. No, 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 this can't be legal, she whispered, though she was alone. He can't just take the house. She opened her laptop, started Googling phrases like revocable property clauses and prenuptial humiliation triggers. She reread their agreement, something she hadn't touched since their wedding planner shoved it into a folder labeled Extras. There it was. Clause 17C. She skimmed the text. One sentence stopped her. In the event of public verbal or reputational harm enacted by either party against the other during an officially documented shared occasion, the injured party may withdraw from jointly held real estate holdings without contest. She'd signed it laughing. God, this is so dramatic, she had said back then. What, are we starring in The Godfather? Martin hadn't laughed. And now he had the house. She had a guest room. And the brutal part, he wasn't kicking her out. He wasn't threatening legal action or yelling or demanding anything. He was just quietly, methodically vanishing her from every part of the life she thought she owned. A deletion, not a confrontation. No fingerprints. Just an absence so absolute, it left her surrounded by familiar things that no longer belonged to her. That night, she slept on the same bed she'd once bragged about to her friends. Egyptian cotton, 800 thread count, custom headboard from some designer she couldn't even remember now, but she slept on it alone. And for the first time, she realized the silence wasn't Martin's weakness. It was his scalpel, and he was cutting her out, piece by piece. The envelope was navy blue, thicker than standard cardstock, with her name handwritten in gold ink. No return address again, just elegance and precision. Tessa thought for one heartbeat that maybe it was from Martin, a peace offering, a signal he was done punishing her. Inside, an invitation to the Langford Foundation Gala. She read it 3 times, then squinted at the fine print, disbelieving what she saw. Celebrating the expansion of the Hill Langford Scholarship Fund. Key sponsors, the Hill Family Trust, Martin A. Hill, Howard Langford Sr. Her hands tightened on the card. Martin, her father. The word family still printed next to her name. At least, technically. She didn't hesitate long. The gala was an old money affair. Black tie, long dresses, silent auction, champagne that came with stories. She'd attended with Martin twice before, both times posing as the charming younger wife in the red dress who kept her husband grounded. She used to tell herself those nights were hers, that people came to see her shine. So when she arrived this time, in designer black, heels sharp enough to be considered weapons, lips lacquered with precision, she thought she could step back into that glow, even without Martin at her side. She was wrong. The moment she stepped through the grand double doors of the Langford Estate ballroom, it became clear she no longer belonged here, not in the way that matters. People looked at her, of course. Brief glances, hesitant nods, polite, obligatory smiles. But no one approached. No one leaned in with warmth. No extended hands or air-kissed greetings. She spotted Linda Carmichael across the room. Board member, former brunch friend, serial hugger. Tessa smiled and raised her hand. Linda looked through her, then turned away. Tessa's stomach tightened. She floated to the bar, ordered something expensive, and turned to scan the room like she was waiting for someone. And then she saw him. Martin, standing near the center of the floor, speaking to 2 men in tuxedos, one of whom was clearly from the mayor's office. His posture was relaxed, confident, the same quiet poise she used to mistake for passivity. He wore a gray suit, not black, subtle, defiant, custom-tailored to make everyone else look overdressed or out of touch. When he laughed, people leaned in. When he spoke, they listened. He moved through the crowd like someone who'd stopped carrying the weight of anyone else's expectations, like a man who'd burned the blueprint of who he used to be and built something colder, sharper, stronger. Tessa waited for him to see her, to lock eyes, to show some flicker of recognition. He didn't. She stood there with her champagne flute dangling like an accessory, forcing a smile as a waiter brushed past her without offering a refill. A younger woman in a pale green dress approached Martin and rested her hand lightly on his arm. She whispered something in his ear. He chuckled. Not the forced, controlled laugh Tessa remembered, but real, easy. The girl couldn't have been more than 32, too young, too confident, and, crucially, too unfamiliar. Tessa stepped forward, 2 paces. A woman cut in front of her. Sharon, from the Langford board. Martin? She gushed, pulling him into a cheek kiss. Your speech later. I cannot wait. Tessa opened her mouth. Sharon looked at her. A flicker of polite recognition. Oh, hi, she said. Not cold, just blank. I'm Tessa. Right, of course. No title, no context, no Mrs. Hill, just a name floating in a room that no longer attached it to anything. Martin finally glanced in her direction. Their eyes met. He didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He simply nodded. Once. And turned back to the conversation. Tessa felt it then. Not anger. not jealousy, erasure. She wandered the rest of the night like a ghost trapped in a life she no longer haunted. The compliments never came. The photos were taken without her. The spotlight, once hers to borrow through proximity, was now placed firmly on Martin. She had come out of curiosity and maybe, somewhere deep inside, hope. Hope that things could be softened, reversed, that the exile was temporary. But it wasn't. This was permanent. He hadn't just left the marriage. He'd left her behind. And now, so had everyone else. She picked the cafe on purpose, low lighting, tucked behind a boutique florist, full of neutral tones and oat milk lattes, the kind of place where reputations could be repaired over cappuccinos, where you could cry in public and still keep your dignity. Tessa needed that. She needed safe. The message had come 2 nights after the gala from Ben Hastings, one of the few who hadn't fully disappeared. Ben was the kind of the guy everyone liked, corporate mediator by trade, social glue by nature. He'd been at the anniversary dinner, at the gala, at every dinner party she used to host where Martin stood quietly at the grill while Tessa told everyone who brought what. She always thought Ben was harmless, neutral, Switzerland with a sweater vest. So when he texted coffee, just you and me, no judgment. She jumped at it. He arrived 3 minutes early, as always, button down, brown shoes, polite smile. She waved from the back booth, already nursing a lukewarm latte she hadn't touched. "Thanks for coming," she said. Ben sat, no handshake, no hug, just settled into the bench across from her, folded his hands on the table, and looked at her like a surgeon deciding where to make the first incision. "I wasn't sure anyone still wanted to be seen with me," she joked. Ben didn't laugh. He just studied her. "That's part of the problem, Tessa. You keep thinking this is about being seen." She bristled, smiled tight. "Okay, look, I know things have been weird, but people are acting like I ran over a nun. It was a joke." "Right, the joke. I didn't cheat on him. I didn't scream. I didn't destroy his life. I made one offhand comment after too much wine." Ben nodded. "Sure, but you made it public. And you made it about him." She rolled her eyes. "Come on, Ben. People have made worse jokes. He's just using it to play the victim." "He's not playing anything," Ben said calmly. "You always joked he was boring, but he was the one who kept everyone together." Tessa's face froze. "What does that even mean?" "I mean, he remembered birthdays, he followed up after someone's surgery, he sent flowers when Olivia's dog died. You were entertaining, but Martin was kind. He was the one we trusted. You were the show. He was the anchor." She opened her mouth, but he wasn't done. "And that night, in front of all of us, people who admired your marriage, you told us what you really thought of him. You stripped him down to a punchline." "It was a joke," she snapped. "Jesus, are we seriously going to pretend people haven't said worse at dinner parties?" Ben leaned in, eyes colder now. "At your own husband's expense?" Silence. He let the question hang. She looked down at her coffee, picked up the cup, set it back down. Her hands suddenly didn't feel steady. Ben reached for his coat. "You're right about one thing," he said, standing up. "People have said worse, but not to the person who built their whole life around them, and not in front of the people who knew better." He slid out of the booth. "Wait," she said. "You think I deserve all this?" "I think," Ben said, pausing, "you thought your charm would clean up what your mouth broke." And then he left. No hug, no wave, just her, sitting alone in a cafe designed to make loneliness look intentional. Tessa stared at the door long after it closed. In all her rehearsed versions of the story, Martin being too sensitive, the dinner being blown out of proportion, the friends just needing time, she had never accounted for this, that the people in her life had never really rallied around her. They rallied around them. And when he withdrew, they chose silence over loyalty, not because Martin asked them to, but because they'd already made their choice. The second gala invitation wasn't mailed, it was emailed, which told Tessa one thing: it was intentional. A quiet slight, no embossed card, no velvet lining. Just a plain white digital invite that landed in her inbox like a reminder that she was lucky to still be on the list. She stared at it for a full hour before clicking RSVP. Yes. Maybe she was a glutton for punishment. Maybe she still believed some part of this could be salvaged. Maybe she just didn't know what else to do anymore besides show up and pretend her world wasn't being erased one polite nod at a time. The venue was new, flashier, modern, less old money, more new influence. Even the valet didn't greet her by name. That stung more than she wanted to admit. Inside, the lights were softer, the music smoother, the guests a little younger. And Martin? Already there, he wore navy this time. Sharp lines, subtle texture. No tie, just that quiet power of a man who'd already won and had no need to raise his voice about it. He was shaking hands with the event host, Elise DuPont, one of those aggressively connected women who seemed to run every boardroom and benefit within a 50-mile radius. Elise laughed loudly, clutching Martin's wrist like he'd just said the funniest thing in the room. Tessa lingered at the edge of the crowd, half behind a tall floral arrangement, pretending to look at the silent auction table. But she wasn't watching paintings. She was watching him, her stomach coiled the way it used to before big client meetings, right before she'd bulldoze the room with charm. But charm doesn't work when the room already chose a side. And tonight, she wasn't even on the board. The lights dimmed slightly, signaling the start of speeches. Elise stepped up to the mic with the ease of a woman who'd hosted galas since before Botox became a household name. "Thank you all for being here," she began. "Tonight we celebrate expansion, of access, of opportunity, and of legacy. And none of that would be possible without our extraordinary donors." She paused. "And one in particular, someone many of you know as soft-spoken, thoughtful, maybe even a little too humble. But what you may not know is that he's also sharp, deliberate, and when he does speak, well, you listen." Elise turned toward the table where Martin sat. "Martin Hill, would you mind saying a few words?" A polite ripple of applause, then louder, real. Martin stood, not hurried, not shy, just deliberate. Tessa felt her throat go dry. He stepped up to the mic, adjusted it slightly, and scanned the crowd with that same calm gaze he'd once used at dinner parties when people got too loud, and he needed only a glance to reset the room. "I'll keep this short," he said, his voice smooth and controlled. "I'm grateful, humbled, honestly. When Elise approached me about putting the Hill name on something meaningful, it took about 2 seconds to say yes, because I've always believed in investing in things that last. Education, integrity, and sometimes silence." Polite laughter. "I've never been much for big speeches," he continued, "but I've learned something recently about how words stick, how they land, and how, sometimes, a joke meant to be funny can do more damage than silence ever could." A beat, he smiled, just barely. "I've learned the hard way. Some jokes cut deeper than they intend." The laughter this time wasn't nervous. It wasn't forced. It was real. Not because of what he said, but because of who was in the room. Heads turned, eyes flicked, and they all found her. Tessa sat perfectly still, spine stiff, lips frozen into a diplomatic half-smile. But her chest burned. It wasn't loud. He didn't name her, didn't accuse, didn't rant. He just slipped the blade in, turned it a quarter inch, and walked away from the mic with a round of applause that rang louder than it should have. The rest of the night blurred. People clapped her on the back less. No photos. No, "you looked amazing" up there compliments. Just a series of strained smiles and careful detours around her space like she carried something contagious. She found herself at the bar, again, watching Martin from a distance. This time, he didn't look at her at all. He didn't need to. He'd already said everything he needed. And now? The entire room knew who the punchline was. She caught him near the coat check, just as the crowd began to thin and the music softened to a background whisper. Her heels clicked faster than usual, more urgency, less elegance. The wine buzz had faded into that hollow, humming awareness that something was slipping from her fingers. Something she used to own without question. Martin stood alone, fixing his cufflink like he had all the time in the world. He hadn't noticed her yet. Or maybe he had and simply didn't care. That was always the hardest part to swallow. Not his anger, but his indifference. She stopped 2 feet from him. "You made your point," she said, arms crossed, voice low, controlled. "You've humiliated me. Publicly. Repeatedly. Congratulations." He didn't look up. She pressed forward. "Are you done?" That got his attention. He raised his head slowly and looked at her the way someone examines an old scar. Curious, but not sentimental. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't smug. It was something worse. Peaceful. "I wasn't trying to humiliate you," he said. "Just correct the story." She scoffed, but there was no force behind it. Her armor had been peeling for weeks, and this moment was its final collapse. You've changed. Martin smiled faintly. No, I just stopped hiding. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in 12 years, she didn't know which version of herself to play. The victim? The ex-wife? The woman who still believed she could turn this around? She defaulted to what used to work. A smirk. You're proud of yourself, huh? She said. All this drama, all this theater, just because I made a stupid comment at dinner? You're really that fragile? Martin stepped forward, not threatening, just close enough for the space to feel deliberate. You said your ex was bigger, he said quietly. Her eyes narrowed. Still stuck on that? He leaned in, not to intimidate her, but to make sure only she could hear what came next. No, he said, I'm not stuck on him. I'm just reminding you of the difference. She blinked. Then he delivered it. Calm, surgical, final. Your ex might have been bigger, but I'm the one you'll never measure up to. Silence. It didn't echo. It settled. Her face went blank. Not angry, not embarrassed, empty, because she finally understood what she'd broken. Not the marriage, not the money, not even the reputation. She'd broken the version of Martin who needed her, and now he stood there, a man no longer bound by apology or habit or hope, just a man who saw her clearly for exactly what she was, and worse, for what she'd never be again. He nodded once, adjusted his jacket, and turned. She didn't stop him. She didn't call after him. There was no dramatic wait or tearful grab, just a room full of strangers and a woman standing in a designer dress, realizing too late that the man she thought was her shadow had become the one thing she could never outshine. Martin walked into the crowd, unhurried. Tessa didn't move. She couldn't, because sometimes the most savage line isn't shouted. It's spoken with perfect clarity and followed by silence that can never be undone.